All right, good afternoon, Liberty North AP and dual credit psychology. It is virtual Wednesday, December 16th. So last virtual Wednesday for the semester. So we made it. Congratulations to all. It's quite an accomplishment, actually. So with everything that's going on, good job to me and good job to you. So I appreciate every one of you guys. So, all right, today, we're going to finish your AP learning targets for Unit 6 with our third kind of category or table, which is observational learning, okay? Now, if you're missing the other two parts that you need, which are classical and operant, again, they've been on the board since last Wednesday, but also you need to view the live stream video from last Wednesday, virtual Wednesday, which is December 9th, okay? Because that's where I actually teach those. So I'm just going to go over it here today, and then we're going to practice it Thursday and Friday, okay? All right, so observational learning, historical name you need to know is Albert Bandura, and he is a pretty critically acclaimed psychologist with a lot of historical context. So observational theory, the famous Bobo doll experiment, which we're going to talk about. He's also pretty famous for his social learning personality theory, which we will also discuss when we get to the personality unit, okay? Now, the Bobo doll is basically his famous experiment on observational learning, and Bandura hypothesized that children learn aggressive behaviors and aggressive language through observational learning. So he created an experiment with children and a Bobo doll. Bobo doll, again, are the kind of the inflatable dolls or inflatables that you blow up and then you hit it and it goes down and it comes back up. So that's a Bobo doll. This one looked like a clown for those of you who are afraid of clowns. So, but what he did is he basically taped a female adult model interacting with the Bobo doll in specific aggressive ways and using specific aggressive language. I think there were 4 of each. So the model hit the Bobo doll, kicked it, picked it up and threw it, and then also hit it with a hammer, like a toy hammer. And then the aggressive language during the experiment was just simply her explaining what she was doing. So she's like, I punch it in the face, I kick it, I throw it across the room, okay? So Bandura had a group of children observe the model on video. So they taped her and they showed it on a TV. And then he led them one by one into another room, which was a playroom, which included the Bobo doll. And so then basically he taped the children and observed the children imitating the model almost exactly in all of the aggressive behaviors and using all of the aggressive language. Now, fascinatingly enough, if you look into the replications and the original study, the boys and girls also invented new aggressive language that was not modeled, and they also invented aggressive behaviors that were not modeled as well. So I think the boys were more likely to invent new aggressive language, and the girls were more likely to invent new aggressive type of behaviors with the doll. So fascinating study. Again, it's world famous. A lot of you have heard of it, okay? So that's his historical importance to observational learning. So kind of the founder, the first researcher, the first theories on observational learning. Okay, so observational learning is basically cognitive learning, all right, which is any type of learning, which is a vocab term, any type of learning of mental or cognitive information. It's also anytime I would use my cognitive abilities for learning. Okay, so like memory, processing, anytime I'm using my mind for learning, that's also cognitive learning. All right, and then social learning. I've got the page numbers here. And social learning is basically, I learn by watching other people, and specifically in the area to gain social intelligence, emotional intelligence, just relational intelligence. All right, so learning by observing others. Again, I don't have to observe people. I generally do, but I can observe situations. I can observe things, machines working, and so on and so forth. But when I observe people, specifically for the case of learning, social context, that's social learning, okay? All right, the specific methodology for observational learning is obviously first I observe, okay? And I observe a model, all right? So in Bandura's Bobo doll experiment, the model was, again, a female adult who was taped interacting with the Bobo doll. So the children observed the model and then they imitated her behavior, okay? Now, we also have, as our brain develops and as we get older and as we mature, and our brains become more complex, we can also choose not to imitate, which children can do, but most of the time they're going to go ahead and imitate anything they see or anything they hear. But as we grow older with each year, we develop, and as our brain develops, we develop the complex cognitive abilities to know that we shouldn't imitate everything that we see, right? Okay, so you know, we'll see people fail at things, and we will choose not to observe them. All right, so you know, this obviously comes into play, especially for all you students who you know, learn specific skills. Like if you're an athlete, a performer, a competitor, you know, if you work somewhere, you know, I'm obviously going to observe. Most of how I learn the skill is by observing a model, somebody demonstrating it, and then I'm going to imitate it. Okay, but I can also observe the people who aren't doing it correctly and choose not to imitate them, right? Or I can observe somebody failing at a specific skill I'm trying to learn, and I can choose not to imitate them, right? Okay, so like if I'm walking down the sidewalk and it's slick out, and then, you know, in front of me I see some people fall in some ice, you know, I'm not going to imitate that. I'm going to actually imitate the opposite. I'm probably going to walk safer, more gingerly, if you will, or I'm just going to go around that spot. Okay, so you know, it is powerful both ways, not only in the imitation, but the choosing not to imitate. But either way, we're still learning observationally by what we see, okay, and by models. And again, we're learning through thought processes, cognitive processes, and we're also observing others, okay? All right, two other types of cognitive learning that are also in your book are insight learning and latent learning, okay? Insight learning is basically when I get that flash of brilliance or that aha moment when the solution just suddenly comes to me. So again, it's a thinking process. You know, so if I'm slaving away on my math homework all night and I'm just really stuck on a problem, and all of a sudden it just kind of flashes in my mind, I finally get it. Or if I'm trying to solve a problem with a friend, you know, and then boom, the solution just kind of pops into my head. That's insight learning, okay? And then latent learning is learning that takes place, but it won't be demonstrated until later, until it's necessary to do so. So again, we are learning all the time behaviorally. You know, we learn through associations, we learn through thinking, we learn through observing others, and we learn through biological ways as well. But I'm not demonstrating everything I'm learning right after it or instantaneously or when it happens, because then I would just be demonstrating learning all the time. So most of the time we learn, and then we, you know, memorize it, we remember it, and we store it away until when it's needed, which is latent learning. Okay, so now latent learning is specifically also related to operant conditioning, in that they say that basically I'm going to learn something, and then it's more likely to come out when I'm reinforced to do so and when I'm punished if I don't. Okay, so that just sounds familiar to you guys. Kind of the cornerstone of the educational community or process is testing or quizzing, right? Which is done usually at the end of each chapter or each section or as you go through. But again, I don't know that you have learned as a teacher. You know, I can check for learning in class periodically, but the big goal or big standard that we use is quizzes and tests. So, you know, you're learning all of the information through Unit 6, and then eventually I'll give you a quiz on the unit, and that's when you demonstrate what you have learned, okay? And you get reinforced with a good grade if you do it, and you get punished with a bad grade if you don't do so well on it, okay? So again, tests and quizzes are great examples of latent learning, okay? All right. Okay. All right. Then lastly, we've got biological learning, okay, which is on page 292. All right. So again, learning is very biological, okay? Obviously, it has a high heritability factor because, again, if I can learn and I learn well, that's going to increase my likelihood to survive. Correct. Okay. So it has a high heritability factor. So we need to learn to survive. So it is biological. It's considered we're predisposed, kind of prepared biologically to learn. Okay. And to learn behaviorally. All right. Because it's good for us to socially learn. Okay. To solve problems and so on and so forth. So just a couple of examples here. So again, nobody's going to probably disagree that we are biologically prepared to learn, you know, that our brains are prepared biologically. It's part of survival of the fittest, okay? But we have specific neurons in our brain called mirror neurons, and all they do is learn through observational. So they're directly connected to my optic nerve in my eyes, and they basically record information that I see and help me learn how to do those things. So, which you can definitely see in children when they're very powerful, but there's still specific areas of our brain containing mirror neurons that learn through observation today. So it looks like our brain is biologically set up to learn observationally, okay, because it aids in our survival. Also, we've already talked about with classical and operant, our brains are biologically set up to learn through association, to pair and associate things together, cause and effect, if you will. We talked about fears, pain, taste aversion. Okay, we automatically look for associations and pairings in our environment. We also talked about superstitions, which again are associations that we make that aren't necessarily accurate. Okay, but we still do it because our brain is biologically prepared to do that. So we are biologically set up to learn, and it's a big part of us surviving. Okay, we also learn through thinking, through mental processes, and we also learn through associations in our environment. Okay, pairing things together. All right, so nobody's going to disagree with any of these three techniques of behavioral learning: classical, operant conditioning, or observational learning. What might happen is that they might have a different explanation of why they work. Again, they're not going to say that the process doesn't work, but they're going to maybe have a different explanation. Your behaviorists are going to explain it using associative learning, okay? And that we just learn through our environment to pair the stimulus with the response or the behavior with the consequence, okay? Cognitive psychologists are going to say both of those things exactly happen, but I have to mentally link the stimulus with the response. I have to mentally link the behavior with the consequence. I have to understand predictability, reliability, okay, which are thought processes, okay? And then, of course, observational learning in its theory and its foundation is cognitive in nature because I'm using my brain, I'm remembering, I'm processing, I'm observing, so I'm using cognitive processes to do it. So any type of observing would be cognitive, okay? Cognitive processes. And then last we have biological, okay? Which would simply say we're biologically prepared to learn through associations. So classical conditioning and operant conditioning work because our brains are naturally biologically prepared to learn that way. We're also biologically prepared to use our mind, our thinking processes to learn, okay? And then we have biologically prepared abilities, skills to help us survive, okay? So we got basically primarily three learning techniques: classical and operant conditioning and observational learning. We primarily have three perspectives that kind of have a big theory on why we learn and how we behaviorally learn, which are behaviorism, we learn through associative learning; cognitive, which we learn through thinking and thought processes; and biological, because we're prepared biologically to learn in our environment, okay? All right, so that completes AP Learning Targets for Unit 6. All you need to do is have the three charts in there. Okay, you still need to do your vocab. And then don't forget that Thursday and Friday, so tomorrow and Friday, you're going to be turning in your AP notebooks for your final. You'll be leaving them with me over break to grade. That's 100 points. All right, and then also remember, again, if you have any zeros at this point, just get something turned in because zeros just destroy grades. So those of you who are on the borderline or not doing so well, just make sure you get rid of those zeros and your grade will increase significantly, okay? All right, if you have any questions, email me. We can also Zoom, but have a good virtual Wednesday.